General Hospital spoilers reveal that the truth can no longer be hidden. The carefully constructed facade, the calculated words of Drew, are now beginning to crumble under the weight of his own ruthless actions. Michael and Diane, who once saw Drew as an ally, a friend, even a crucial part of the effort to protect the Corinthos family, are now forced to confront a devastating truth. A string of dark deeds and a hidden web of manipulation Drew has been quietly operating in the shadows all along. For Michael, this revelation hits like a slap to an already worn-down sense of trust, eroded by years of family turmoil. He had forgiven, he had tried to understand Drew's past mistakes, especially during the chaos involving Nina, Carly, and Willow. But now, reading firsthand the internal reports from the clinic in Germany, where Drew secretly paid staff to lie and claim that Michael didn't want to see Willow, his heart breaks in fury. It wasn't just a brutal invasion of his private life, it was a deliberate distortion of the fragile bond he had been struggling to rebuild with the woman he loves. Drew didn't just push him and Willow apart, he exploited their pain for his own ends, all under the mask of an honorable man. And for Diane, a woman who has weathered countless storms and whose intuition is sharp when it comes to deceit, this isn't just another case, it's a deeply personal betrayal. She once defended Drew, represented him in commercial disputes, and spoke for him in the media when he straddled the line between businessman and politician. But now, as she uncovers evidence of Drew framing Tracy in a drug scandal, hiding an affair with Nina, and manipulating financial data to maintain his grip over Aurora Media, Diane realizes she can no longer stand by. Not just for justice, but for the integrity she's upheld her entire legal career. The deeper Diane and Michael dig, the more merciless Drew's machinations appear. Anonymous calls, funds moved through unnamed accounts, encrypted emails tied to secret meetings with foreign investors, all paint a grim portrait of a man who has completely lost his moral compass. Drew is no longer just someone who made bad choices, he has become a real threat, not just to the Corinthos family but to the entire power structure that keeps Port Charles from descending into chaos. Michael no longer has doubts. Diane no longer hesitates. Together, they are forging a plan, not for revenge, but to stop a cycle of damage that will only grow if Drew is allowed to continue unchecked. They know the counterstrike won't be easy. Drew has allies, influence, experience, and a chilling ability to manipulate emotions. But they also know that the truth carries its own weight, and this time, it's heavy enough to bring down everything Drew is desperately trying to protect. One of the first moves, exposing Drew's connection with Nina, not just an affair, but a secret alliance aimed at skewing the narrative in Michael and Willow's custody battle. Diane begins drafting indictments, while Michael gathers those who have been harmed by Drew's schemes, including Tracy, Willow, and even Portia, who once silently endured Drew's subtle blackmail to keep her past hidden. Michael's shift in attitude is now a formidable undercurrent. Once the peacemaker, the protector of every relationship, he is now ready to bring an end to what cannot be salvaged. The shock of the truth didn't break him, it made him a leader in the fight to bring Drew's secrets into the light. And in that mission, Diane is his blade, sharp, precise, and unrelenting. When the final secrets are exposed, Drew will face not just the wrath of those he betrayed, but the full force of a system being reshaped to stand against those who exploit it. With clarity and determination, Michael and Diane are proving that truth doesn't need to come early, it only needs to arrive at the right moment to crush what was built on lies and betrayal. And when that moment comes, Drew will have nowhere left to hide. Michael no longer masks the anger and disappointment smoldering inside him as the truth about Drew continues to surface. Once considered a protector, an ally in times of crisis, Drew has now revealed himself as a manipulative, deceitful, and dangerously secretive figure. Michael isn't just furious about being misled, he's enraged because Drew deliberately targeted Willow, the woman he has always tried to protect, the woman he's never stopped loving. Even through distance and silence, Drew's actions are no longer mere mistakes, they are deliberate betrayals. He interfered with Willow's treatment by bribing staff at the German clinic and quietly sabotaged her connection with Michael through calculated lies. Michael now understands that if Drew remains in Willow's life, not only will her old wounds never heal, but she risks being drawn deeper into the sinister schemes Drew has yet to abandon. Michael no longer wants to see her dragged down again. He no longer has the patience to wait for change in a man who, to him, has become nothing more than an empty shell. Willow, after days of silent observation, can no longer bear the heaviness in her heart. The puzzle pieces are finally falling into place. Details she once chose to ignore now stand out with painful clarity. From Michael's eyes when he mentioned Drew, to the contradictions in Drew's words during moments she thought were sincere, it all points to one undeniable truth: she has been deceived. Not once. Not in just one way. But repeatedly. Everything she believed to be her foundation turned out to be a facade built to serve Drew's personal agenda. And realizing that her own mother was part of that web leaves Willow feeling as though the ground beneath her is shattering. Willow is no longer the passive, gentle woman she once was. After enduring illness, loss, and repeated emotional shocks, she has learned to look pain in the eye and walk through it unbroken. Now, she knows that to live truthfully, she cannot remain tied to a man who distorts the truth and keeps her from those who genuinely love her. When she confronts Drew, it isn't a conversation, nor a plea or an argument. It is closure, a final declaration that she sees him for who he truly is, and that she is no longer someone who can be manipulated by smooth words. Michael, watching from a distance, does not interfere. He lets Willow reclaim the voice she had lost in months of pressure, illness, and sweetly spoken lies. He knows this is the turning point. When Willow walks away from Drew without looking back, Michael realizes she has truly let go, not bound by vague gratitude or old guilt. She is herself again. And he, the one who patiently waited for her to rise, can finally believe that what he hoped for has come true. Drew no longer holds power. What he's done cannot be erased with a few explanations. When the truth is exposed and trust is broken, everything he once built turns to dust. Willow has stepped out of the storm. Michael is ready to protect what remains. And Drew, the master manipulator, now stands alone in the ruins of the world he destroyed. The shocks are turning into actions. The reckoning has begun. And the storm of truth has finally swept through, leaving behind a sky where falsehoods have no place to survive. Michael no longer hides behind a mask of kindness when it comes to Drew, the man he once called family, once relied on as a pillar during his darkest moments. But now, every trace of that old trust has been burned away by the layers of lies Drew built with the cold precision of a manipulator driven by ambition. No longer willing to fight in silence, Michael has stepped out of neutrality and begun wielding his sharpest weapon to dismantle Drew's defenses: Willow, the very woman Drew once clung to as a symbol of redemption and goodness. And yet, it is Willow whom Michael now chooses to end it all. This is not an act of petty revenge, but a calculated reckoning. Michael understands that if Drew once dared to manipulate Willow's emotions for personal gain, then he too can flip that narrative, by allowing Willow to become the final wave that sweeps away Drew's illusion of moral integrity. Michael never forces Willow's hand. But every one of his actions is aimed at a single goal: letting her see the unfiltered truth and allowing her to make the final decision. He arranges for the documents proving Drew bribed clinic staff in Germany to be delivered directly to Willow. He discreetly leaves audio recordings of Portia's testimony, admitting she was threatened and bribed by Drew to stay silent. He knows each detail, each word. Each facial expression will land like 100 knives into Willow's heart, and that she will be the one to redraw the line between justice and blind trust. As Willow slowly pulls back, as disappointment grows in her eyes each time she looks at Drew, Michael says nothing. He simply observes in silence, knowing that his plan is taking hold. Drew has no idea he's standing on a fragile rope bridge that Michael has been quietly severing, strand by strand, and the final cut will come from Willow herself. To Drew, everything is starting to unravel. He begins to sense that the people around him are no longer on his side. Unreturned calls, cancelled meetings, and suspicious looks from old allies begin to push him into a state of defensive paranoia. But what frightens him most is not public alienation or the risk of losing his position. it is the cold distance growing in the woman he once vowed to protect. Willow no longer says his name with tenderness. She no longer shares her deepest thoughts after a long day. Between them now is the silence of half-spoken words and hugs that have lost their warmth. And then, Drew realizes the worst. She's looking at him like a stranger, as if every moment of intimacy they once shared is now a faded illusion, unreachable and gone for good. The truth is spilling through the cracks of every lie Drew once used to hide behind. The documents Diane and Michael have been quietly gathering are being prepared for release. Aurora Media may soon no longer bear Drew's name. His position as a congressman, once seen as a symbol of rebirth, is now under scrutiny from the very people who once supported him. His relationship with Nina stands on the edge of exposure, threatening to unveil a network of covert financial alliances. But what shakes Drew the most is that Willow, the woman he believed would always stand by him, might now be the one to deliver the most painful blow of his life, a confrontation not with an enemy, but with someone he once loved, once sheltered, and never imagined would be the one to turn away from him in the moment it mattered most. Michael's actions are not driven by ego, but by a desire to restore truth, to expose the man who has caused too much suffering, including to himself. In Michael's eyes, Drew is no longer the heroic figure reborn from a lost identity. He is a man who used that past to construct a false image, to avoid responsibility, and to manipulate the trust of the most vulnerable. And Michael, after everything he has endured, is ready to use truth as the lever that brings Drew's entire world crashing down. The confrontation is nearing, not with screams or gunfire, but with the silence of disappointment. The gaze of betrayal, and the meticulously planned actions Michael has been setting in motion. Drew may sense it coming, but he cannot stop it. And when Willow stands before him, not as a gentle partner but as someone holding the mirror up to every one of his wrongs, Drew will be forced to face a reality he can no longer escape. He has lost everything. Not because of external enemies, but because of the very people he thought would never walk away. And they have walked away, not in anger, but because they can no longer believe in someone who now loves only himself. Drew is approaching the final edge of collapse, with nothing left to cling to, and no excuse strong enough to suit the severity of his self-inflicted damage. Willow will leave him, there's no doubt anymore. The love she once preserved has crumbled beneath the weight of betrayal and manipulation. But losing Willow, while a devastating blow to his heart, is not the worst that awaits Drew. What's more disastrous is that he will lose everything, his position, his reputation, his political power. He will lose the congressional seat he once saw as a symbol of redemption. A testament that his dark past could be replaced by a journey of atonement. But the truth reveals otherwise. Drew did not atone, he concealed. He did not rebuild, he manipulated. And when the foundation is built on deception, its collapse is inevitable and unforgiving. The damage Drew now faces is no longer personal. It's a widening crack in a once solid power structure, exposing the image and credibility he constructed to public scrutiny. Shady financial transactions, recorded blackmail, forged reports, all are being readied for exposure. Michael, who once silently endured it all, is now the one preparing to strike the final blow. He no longer reserves compassion for a man he once saw as a brother. He no longer believes Drew is merely lost. He believes Drew knows exactly what he's doing, and is willing to crush anyone to hold on to power. Michael has provided evidence of Drew bribing medical staff at the German clinic. And he's working with Diane to release the full spectrum of Drew's actions: media manipulation through Aurora, abuse of political office to shield personal misconduct, and exploiting his relationship with Nina to influence the custody battle between Michael and Willow. This is no longer a family conflict. It is a scandal, political, moral, and deeply personal. A media bomb waiting to detonate. And when it does, Drew will have nothing left. His congressional seat, once his pride and strategic advantage in Port Charles, will be the first to fall. No one wants to be associated with a disgraced politician accused of abuse of power, scandalous personal conduct, and witness intimidation from within his own circle. Once the scandal spreads through the media, sponsors will withdraw, meetings will be cancelled, alliances will collapse. And most of all, his personal credibility will never recover. He will be removed from civic projects, investigated by an ethics committee, and potentially face criminal charges if the financial manipulation is confirmed. This disaster didn't come from the outside. It's the direct result of Drew's own calculated missteps, when he exploited Willow's trust, framed Tracy, used Nina as a pawn, and assumed Michael would stay silent forever. That was the moment he placed the bomb beneath his own feet. And now that Michael has chosen to act, every one of Drew's defenses is falling apart. Michael didn't act in haste. He chose the perfect moment, when every piece of evidence was vetted, every alliance was ready, and the public was primed for the blow. When Michael delivers the final strike, a public press conference or an official complaint filed with the city council, there will be no turning back. Drew will be unable to deny, unable to deflect, and unable to blame anyone but himself. He will lose everything in an instant, a fall beyond redemption, a living proof of what happens when pride hides behind a mask of false morality. The catastrophe Drew faces is no longer a threat. It's reality. And in that seismic moment, the woman he loved, Willow, will not stand by him. The man he once saw as a brother, Michael, is now the one bringing it all to an end. And when the light finally exposes everything, Drew will be left with only one thing, himself, alone. Collapsed in the ashes of what he once believed would last forever. Willow is no longer the gentle, calm woman she once knew in Port Charles. The betrayal is too deep. The layers of lies interwoven from both Drew and those she once trusted have caused her psychology to begin to change. No longer the silent tears or the patient retreats. Willow is gradually falling into a state of loss of control, a madness fed by pain, resistance, and the feeling of being used to the extreme. Every action, every look of hers now carries a cold nuance, no longer warm or forgiving. Willow is no longer fighting for love. She is fighting to reclaim herself, to destroy the person who made her lose herself. Drew did not realize that until it was too late. He still thought that Willow was a woman who could forgive, who could be attached by love and duty, who could sympathize with his wrong choices as long as he knew how to bow his head and apologize. But what Drew did not see was that Willow no longer needed any explanation. She knew the truth all too well. She knew about his secret rendezvous with Nina. She saw the evidence that he had paid her not to see Michael on their trip to Germany. She heard from Portia herself that Drew had blackmailed her. And it was in that series of shocks that a new Willow was born, not weak, not hesitant, but calculating, silent, and terrifyingly cold. Willow didn't speak. She watched. She memorized. She waited for the right moment to strike, and this time, she didn't need anyone's help. Not Michael. Not Carly. Not Diane. She went it alone. Because she wanted to be the one to end it all. Because the man who ruined her didn't deserve to face anyone but the one he'd stabbed in the back with all his lies. One of Willow's first acts was to quietly copy all the documents related to Drew's dealings with Aurora Media, the rigged contracts, the shady financial transactions signed in other people's names. The evidence that Drew had used his position as a congressman for personal gain. She carefully sent these copies to independent financial and media investigative organizations, ensuring that once the news broke, Drew would have nowhere to hide. Not stopping there, Willow quietly approached Drew's political donors, presenting evidence of his ethical betrayals and administrative violations during his campaign. She knew which blow would break Drew first, and she chose to strike at his greatest pride. His political career. But the final blow was devastating. Willow decided to hold a live interview with the media, not to tell her personal story, but to expose a false portrait. Under the lights of the cameras, she recounted the process of being manipulated, isolated from Michael, deceived about the relationship between Drew and her biological mother. She described exactly what it felt like to be a woman pushed into a state of despair to serve a political image campaign. Her voice did not tremble, she did not cry. Every word was like a bullet that stabbed straight into the reputation that Drew had spent her entire career building. And when the interview ended, when the media began to spread the clips exposing the truth, Drew's name was no longer a symbol of rebirth, but a testament to deception and exploitation. Willow did not need to see Drew fall with her own eyes. She had finished him in her mind long before. But this time, with all that she had endured, she chose not to leave silently. She left her mark, not as a victim, but as the ultimate executioner. And that was what really broke Drew. Not from the public outcry. Not from losing his seat as a senator. But from the fact that the last person he thought was on his side, the person he thought was the easiest to control, was the one who had planned and executed his downfall. Willow was no longer the light in Drew's life. She became the darkness. And in that darkness, Drew lost everything, not just his status, his career, his love, but his last chance at forgiveness. Willow forgave no more. She was finished. And as she walked away, leaving Drew shattered in the ashes of his own reputation, fate had closed the final door. Drew's end was not just an outcome, it was the inevitable consequence of his own doing.